1. When I was in college, I saw a ghost in my apartment. I have always been of the opinion that ghosts and paranormal phenomena are probably real, but I'd never had any personal experience with them. It just seemed silly to me that hundreds of thousands of people could have these experiences, and people would just dismiss them because of evidence. Anyway, right after we got married, my ex-husband and I moved into the basement apartment in this old Art Deco house. Right from the beginning, I started having the feeling that I wasn't alone in the apartment, even when I knew I was. It wasn't scary at all. If anything, it was kind of nice, like knowing your friend is just in the other room, out of sight. Well, one night my husband and I were sitting in our living room watching TV, and I got up and went into the kitchen to get a snack. The kitchen and the living room were right next to each other, just separated by an arched doorway. When I came back, there was a teenage girl sitting on the love seat, just staring at my husband with this look of intense sadness and anger on her face. She was dressed in an orangey striped tank top with cut-off jean shorts. She had light brown hair that was swept away from her face in a 70s style. She looked completely normal, not creepy or transparent or anything. I just stood there in shock for a second, wondering where in the hell she came from. Then I realized there was absolutely no way she could have gotten into the apartment without me noticing. I walked right past the front door to get to the kitchen. Also, it was the dead of winter in Utah. No way anyone was running around in a tank top and shorts. And she wasn't casting a shadow in the light from the TV. All of this kind of hit me at once, and I covered my eyes and screamed bloody murder. My husband jumps out of his skin and starts yelling, "What? What's the matter?" I jerked my hands away from my face, and she is just gone. No sign that she was ever there. My ex never saw her. Now there are only two options here. Either I'm crazy and hallucinated her, or I saw a ghost. I have never hallucinated anything else, and all evidence points to the fact that I'm entirely sane. So I have to assume that I saw a ghost. No more wondering or guessing, they're real, and I saw one with my own eyes. Here's some more info on my ghost. Unfortunately, I never did look into the history of the house. Things got really intense shortly thereafter, and trying to figure out who this girl was the last thing on my mind. After seeing her, I was actually pretty embarrassed about the way I reacted. Normally, I'm a pretty level-headed person, and screaming like a bimbo in a horror movie made me feel pretty foolish. I also felt kind of like I had been really rude, if that makes any sense. I actually stood there in my living room the next day and apologized to the empty air. Anyway, I was on high alert for other signs that she was around. Nothing too obvious happened for a while, but some weird things were starting to happen to my ex. He kept inexplicably losing things, which would turn up right where they belonged as soon as he left for work. For example, I saw him hang his truck keys on the hook when he got home. When he went to leave in the morning, they're nowhere to be found. He ends up taking my car. About an hour later, I get out of the shower, and there are his keys hanging on the hook again. Could we have just missed them? Maybe, but it's unlikely. He's also having problems with our electricity. He'll walk into the closet right when the light bulb burns out. His cell phone will just stop charging in the middle of the night, so his alarm doesn't go off and he's late for work. The garage door opener won't work if he's holding it, but I'll go out and try it 5 minutes later, with no issues. Again, entirely possible that these things have a logical explanation, but I was getting the idea that she really didn't like him, which was kind of starting to scare me. Right about this time, I start feeling halfway sick all the time, like a low-grade cold that just won't go away. I chalked it up to stress from school and work, and staying up too late and eating junk, the usual college stuff. A couple of months go by like this. One morning I dragged myself into the bathroom just feeling like crap. I was so exhausted that I actually sat down on the radiator and stared at the wall for a minute. Then I started hearing this noise, really, really faint. It sounds like someone whispering right behind me. Then I actually felt someone touch my hair, very gently. I'm sitting there kind of frozen, and the door to my medicine cabinet slowly swings shut on its own. And I'm staring at my own face in the mirror. I look scared, but I also look sick, like really sick. I'm pale and I've lost so much weight, I can see my ribs on my chest. And the circles under my eyes look like bruises are so bad. I just think, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. I need to go to the doctor. I'm so shocked by how bad I look. I forget all about any paranormal stuff for the moment. I called my doctor that morning, and by the next day, I had been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's cancer of the lymph nodes, in case you're wondering. And it's really curable as long as you catch it early enough. Looking back on it now, I'm sure my ghost knew somehow. She gave me the wake-up call that I needed. But at the time, with everything going on, I didn't spend much time thinking about it. 2. When I was 19, I moved out west and ended up getting a job at an assisted living facility called the Community Restorium. As if the name isn't creepy enough, turns out it was built in the early 1900s and was once a hospital and then a mental institute. The building was set up with a large dining room area that had a nice indoor fence separating it from the living room area with an opening in the middle. The fence was set up so looking straight at it you couldn't see through it, but from an angle you could. I believe it's called a shutterbox fence. The area between the dining and living area was where you walked up to go from one hall to the other. There were 2 hallways, a short one and a long one with 32 rooms total. The building was kind of a U-shape. At the corner near the long hall was our medroom. In the medroom is a call system that allows you to call to a resident's room, or allows them to call you. You are able to communicate through the call system. I originally started on shift 7 to 3. It was beautiful during the day. Most of our residents were pretty independent, and we would do a lot of cleaning and laundry. Then after a month or so, I started working overnights 11 to 7. That's when things got weird. It started with strange noises. You would hear the sounds of water coming up the hall and wonder who is awake. But when you peek around the corner, no one is there. Then you would see things out of the corner of your eye. At first I would write this off as my imagination. Working third shift can make you tired, but after a while you start to wonder. The first incident, I was working with a girl who was filling in for my normal co-worker. She had been in the kitchen preparing drinks for breakfast, and I was in a chair in the living room, charting. I saw her through the fence come out of the kitchen door and walk through the dining room. Then out of the corner of my eye, I could see her come through the opening and walk into the living area. This was out of the corner of my eye, because the opening in the fence was just behind me to my right. I was so certain I saw her walking past the fence and behind me that I even started talking to her as she approached me. I kept talking as I charted, and then I looked up and was surprised to see she wasn't there. I thought maybe she hadn't heard me despite me speaking in a normal volume. I got up, walked into the dining area and into the kitchen. She was nowhere to be found. I walked through the kitchen and out the other kitchen door into the long hall side. That's when I saw her coming up the long hall. I asked her how long she had been down there, and she told me she'd been in a resident's room the past 15 minutes assisting her. I immediately got goosebumps. The second incident isn't a single occurrence. We had a long-time resident who lived on the short hall. He was physically sound and able to get up, walk, dress himself, use the bathroom, and do most things on his own. However, he suffered from early onset Alzheimer's, and his mind was starting to go. I believe he was in his late 90s when I worked there. He spent his entire life caring for his parents and farming. He was never married and never had children. He would wake up at 5 a.m. every morning like clockwork. He'd come down and chat with us girls about Ma and Pa, and drink his coffee. One week, there were some odd things going on with him. He came out at 2 a.m. fully dressed and looking for the party. We asked him what party, and he said the girl on the loudspeaker told him it was time to get up, or he would miss the party. We assured him there was no party, and asked him if he would like to go back to bed. The next night he woke up again at 3 a.m. Came out just in his underwear. We asked him what was going on, and he said the girl in the speaker told him he needed to get up right away. This happened several more nights. It was always the girl in the speaker telling him to get up. We never woke residents up with the call system. The following week, we had another resident experience a similar occurrence. She was in the room next to his. Her Alzheimer's was much farther along, and she needed a lot of assistance in the mornings. She was able to walk, but conversations were in the past. She was also able to dress herself, but you had to direct her the entire time. She had never woke in the middle of the night prior, but randomly started coming out of her room at 2 or 3 a.m. She would tell us the girl on the radio told her it was time to wake up. The final story I will post on here was within the same month, February, as the other three. This one affected me the most. It was 3:24 a.m., and one of our residents in the short hall nearest the living room came out of her room. She was in her late 80s, and although her mind was sharp as a tack, her body had started to fail her. She was a little Native American woman who had lived in the area her whole life. She was able to walk on her own, but not without difficulty, and she normally used a walker. That's what made it all the more surprising for us. She came out white as a ghost and frantic as could be, and started insisting someone was in her room. As night staff who work in a place that has a lot of prescription narcotics, we tend to worry about possible intruders. As we walked towards her door, we started asking her what happened. She told us someone was in her room trying to steal things. She said they came in through the window because it was very cold in there. She said they didn't speak, but she could see the outline of them standing at the foot of her bed from the streetlight shining in the window. She said she told them that she wasn't afraid to die, and laid in bed and closed her eyes until they were gone, and then she came to get us. I had my co-worker wait in the hall, and I turned the light on in the room and walked in. Not a thing was out of place. The window was shut and locked tight. The only thing I did notice was that it did feel colder than normal. We turned on all the lamps and shut her blinds and sat and talked to her for a while. She kept insisting that someone was in her room. As I said, this woman was sharp as a tack despite being in her late 80s. She was actually one of my favorite residents to visit with. The final thing I will add here is that her room had a shared bathroom with the neighboring room. Her neighbor was dying. During her final days of life, she would talk to people who were not there. Her daughter would stay overnight, and when I mentioned the name, she would say, "It turns out they were relatives who had died long ago." This woman suffered from the very late stages of Alzheimer's, and didn't speak for months. But in her final days, she started talking in full sentences to people who weren't there. This all took place in 2011, and shortly after I ended up moving back east. I still think about this place a lot. There were many more little incidents that would happen, but these were the major ones that I will never forget. 3. Alright, so about 2 or 3 years ago, I was out biking with my friends on Canada Day, chasing local fireworks shows, and just having a good time. It was like 10 at night or something, and there was me, Yargo, my best friend Bill, and a random kid from another neighborhood nearby, Nye. We saw a shit ton of fireworks go off near us, and our choice to get there was to go around the large forest in my area and through it on the trails. Keep in mind we didn't have flashlights, and the moon was only a bit yellow, and were literally right in front of the forest. So we decided to bike on in, but just before we start to go, Nye says, guys, what's that?" And he points to something in the forest. "What, are you trying to scare us, kid?" We couldn't see what he saw, but he sure saw something because he got on his bike and turned right on around, sobbing and his eyes wide with fear. I don't get scared very easy, but one thing that just freaks me the fuck out is when someone else just looks scared as shit and I have no clue what they see. Oh, and guess what just happened? That kid saw some shit, and I was just standing there like, fuck, 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 fuck. Bill chirps in and says, "We got good quality bikes and the forest is small. The kid is just being a douche, let's go." Of course we get on our bikes and go because that makes perfect sense. We start going through the forest, and even though it's not too big, we're still scared as shit pedaling as fast as possible. But my friend was pedaling so fast he slid on one of the turns on the path. He fell off of his bike, and since I was going too fast, I couldn't stop. I hear him scream, and I think it's from the pain. I get through the forest, lose my speed, and head back in to help my friend. Even though I'm just more scared, I stop at the spot where he crashed, but he wasn't there, nor was his bike. I saw where he slid out and a bit of blood on the ground, but that was it. I thought he went back out the other way to go and get help. Then, just as I'm getting on my bike to go home and call him, I look at the moon, and it has a dark red tinge to it, and I hear Bill scream again. At this point I just say, "Fuck this, I'm out," and I bike out of there. The next day I go to his house and he answers the door, and he says the single scariest thing I've ever heard anyone say. Me. "I'm so sorry I couldn't get back to you. What happened?" "Why were you screaming?" Bill. "It's fine. You really shouldn't worry about me. Worry about him getting you one day." Then he smiled with fear and shut the door. He wasn't joking, because something that elaborate was just too much for him, and the moon, blood and screams were real and unexplainable. Today I never go in that forest no matter what. Me and him haven't said a word about it either, and we're still best friends. 4. During college I went to Minnesota on spring break with my boyfriend to visit family in Duluth. Another friend rode up with us and shared the cost of gasoline, as he had friends in the Twin Cities he wanted to visit, so we dropped him off. On the way up, we broke the long drive from Ohio in half, but I don't remember exactly where we stopped for the night. In Wisconsin, most likely. This was many years ago. The three of us got a decent but inexpensive hotel room, somewhere in that nondescript range between Motel 6 and Holiday Inn. We had all piled our bags next to the dresser and TV stand, just taking out a change of clothes and a toothbrush, etc. As we were just crashing for the night, and taking off again early in the morning, we were worn out from the drive, and just wanted sleep. Sometime in the night I was awakened by soft, stealthy sounds, and a sense of subtle but constant movement in the room near our bags. I didn't jolt fully awake, but was quite groggy and sleepy. I thought I must be half dreaming, but the sound and movement went on, and each time I'd fall back asleep, it would wake me up again. I was so tired, and the repeated awakenings were most unwelcome. Gradually, upon the third or fourth awakening, I think, I gathered the uneasy impression that there were people in the room, going quietly through our bags. I had two simultaneous thoughts. That's impossible. I locked the door and put the chain on myself. I am more or less awake, yet somehow I must be dreaming this. But if I'm dreaming it, why does it keep waking me up from my sleep? If there are real thieves in the room, they are interested in our stuff, not us, and it's probably wisest to keep feigning sleep to avoid any confrontation. I can't say exactly how I gained the following impressions, whether they were visuals I sleepily saw in a dark room, or just a half-dreaming embellishment. But I felt like there were 2 or 3 people, and one might be a female. I had an impression also of youth and slenderness. They were very quiet and focused on what they were doing, and I had a vague notion that they must have done this before. There was nothing worth stealing in the bags, just college kids' clothes and toiletries. This was way before cell phones and laptops, and MP3 players and all that valuable jazz. We didn't have any drugs or alcohol in our bags either, so nothing was worth anything to anyone, really. I believe my purse and the guys' wallets were elsewhere in the room, maybe in the nightstand between the two beds, because I don't remember being concerned that these shadowy intruders would find our money or cards or keys. My impression was that they did not approach the beds or pay attention to us in any way. I heard no whispers, just the stealthy rustling of people feeling around in various duffel bags and suitcases. But doing so over and over and over, which is what kept waking me, to what seemed an excess. I remember ending up feeling more annoyed than alarmed, kind of like, oh, just get on with it, would you, so I can finally get back to sleep. Also, I felt relatively safe because there were two men in the room with me. If I had been alone, it would have been a different matter. Finally, I thought, alright, this makes no sense, it has to be a dream. I'm exhausted, I'm over it. And I fell back to sleep completely. In the morning, I didn't say anything about it to the guys. I checked the door chain and it was in place, glanced through my bags and nothing was missing or disturbed whatsoever. Then at breakfast, our friend shocked me when he said, "Well, that certainly wasn't a very restful night." I froze and said cautiously, "What do you mean?" He replied, "I don't know, just all that activity going on, I guess." I asked him to elaborate. He then seemed confused and said slowly, "Well, it doesn't make sense, but I kept getting the feeling, for some reason, that people were in our room messing with our stuff." My boyfriend, who slept like a rock, had noticed nothing, but I was startled to my core to have my own vague impressions validated. People, plural, in the room, messing with our belongings. I had told him what I had perceived. He had no explanation for it either, and we were fairly weirded out. As far as I can tell, no one was actually in the room in reality. But why would two of the three of us be repeatedly awakened by stealthy noises from the same part of the room and have such similar impressions? Did we share a dream? Was one of us sleepwalking and unaware of it? Was it something paranormal? I don't know. By the way, that friend is now a professor of law at an Ivy League university, so he's a pretty credible individual. And if two of us had the impression that people were in our room going through our stuff, why did we not turn on the light, yell, etc.? My only instinct was to pretend that I was asleep. That seems to have been my friend's strategy too, as he didn't call out, "Get up," or turn the light on either. 5. I used to work as a janitor at a pretty well-known supermarket on the East Coast, known as ShopRite. I worked there from March of 2013 until September of 2015, 2.5 years. I always knew this place had something to it, and used to talk to my coworker about it. The first month that I worked there, I heard the voice of a little girl in the employee bathroom saying, "Hey there." And I was the only one in the bathroom, of course. I used to catch things out of the corner of my eye in the back room, shadows or even figures that were not actually there. My co-worker and I would often hear voices while we were by the garbage chute, when no one was anywhere near us. I should note, the store was directly next door to a funeral home. Go figure. Anyway, the scariest thing that ever happened to me there happened in August of 2015, about a month before I left. I just started my shift and was pushing the trash can from the dairy dock, where we kept all of our cleaning equipment, out into the store to change the trash in each department. The men's room is also located right outside of the dock, in what we call the dairy hallway. It's a single bisex bathroom, with one toilet and a sink. As I'm passing the bathroom, a customer stops me. He's an elderly man who looks a bit frustrated. "Sir, I've been waiting to get in that bathroom for almost 30 minutes. Someone has been in there the entire time. The door is locked and you can hear them doing whatever, they are doing in there. Concerned that maybe something is wrong with whoever is in the bathroom, I step up to the door and knock. "Anyone in there?" Just as the old man said, I can hear the fan running and what sounds like someone scuffing their feet on the floor and talking to themselves. I couldn't understand what they were saying, though. I knocked again and called out once more, but received no response. The scuffing sound and whispering continued, but this person was not acknowledging me in any way. So just to be sure, I stepped back from the door and got down on the floor. There's a bit of space between the bottom of the door and the floor, where you can kind of see into the bathroom. Through this space I could definitely make out the shadow of someone pacing back and forth in the bathroom, and could still hear them talking to themselves. I stood up and tried the door. Sure enough, it was locked. So at this point I have no idea what's going on. If they are pacing back and forth, then they are obviously not hurt. I knew that we sometimes got people that would go into the bathroom and do things that you shouldn't be doing in there. We'd caught people having sex in there, and we also caught people doing drugs. So I came to the conclusion that someone was in there fooling around and doing something that was probably illegal and going to cause me a mess to clean up later. I grabbed my walkie and called the manager. I asked that the manager call the phone in the dairy hall, as I didn't want to explain over the walkie, since some people don't use headsets, and I didn't want any of the customers to overhear. Once the phone rang, I explained to the manager, we'll call him James, that someone was in the bathroom in the dairy hall and had been in there for 30 minutes. The door was locked, and whoever it was not responding to me, and there was another customer in need of the bathroom. So James comes down to the dairy hall to help figure things out. Like me, he knocks on the door, tries the handle, calls out to the person inside, and even gets down to his knees and sees the same thing I saw. The shadow of someone pacing back and forth. Also, like me, he could hear someone whispering on the inside of the bathroom. All of us growing very annoyed at this point, James stood up and starts trying to pick the lock. Eventually, he managed to unlock the door and yanked it open. We were all expecting to find some damn junkie stoned out of their minds or something. That's not what we saw, though. We saw nothing. The bathroom was completely empty. There was no one there, no signs that anyone had been in there for a while. The old man who stopped me in the beginning of all of this started laughing nervously. "I think I'll just go home and use my own bathroom," he said before turning and walking away. I spent the next 10 minutes trying to figure this whole thing out with my manager, but we couldn't come up with any explanations. All three of us, James, myself, and the old man, had all heard someone inside that bathroom. The door was locked from the inside, and there was no way anyone could have locked it and gotten out without unlocking it. We never came up with an explanation for what happened. James, though freaked out, brushed it off and told me not to worry about it. I carried on with my usual duties for my 5-hour shift, and told my co-worker about it when he showed up. Later that night, after I had left, my co-worker texted me and told me that he had been cleaning that same bathroom, and the whole time he was in there, he thought he kept hearing voices, and felt like someone was watching him clean. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 50. I debated whether or not I should do something special to celebrate this one, but I decided I'll just celebrate the hundreds, so we're about another 50 eps away before we have a special paranormal episode. Although we will have something on Halloween, but for the regular videos, 50 away. I was looking at things earlier. I was looking at old radio plays to see if I could find anything that's currently in the public domain. The idea was, you know the old The Shadow radio plays? Orson Welles used to do them. I'm not sure about the legality of that or the character, but I'm going to look about for something, and I'm thinking I might put something together. Might even try and pull some other people in, because I have had requests for people to work on me with things, and that would actually be a perfect way to do it, because there's multiple characters, multiple dialogue, so it would certainly be a way to get people involved. So I'm not sure what I'll end up doing, but I'm sure there'll be something out there I can use. Otherwise, I'll probably have to write something myself, which isn't out of the realm of possibility. Okay, just ideas I'm mulling over. Might not come to fruition. It might actually happen, but I'm certainly looking into it, because, as always, I want to expand the channel. I think I've done a good job of introducing different ideas here and there, and maybe try out some different formats as well. That's the only way to keep growing. It's the only way to keep people interested and to keep myself interested as well. Okay, with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very